can we get back to explaining the entirety of the Skyrim lore now?
Hello. So I was requested to record another hour of rambling about Skyrim lore. So, Elder Scrolls, but the original name was like Skyrim lore. Anyway. And so, because I would like to do any actionable request made of me, I am doing it. We have a new area that I'm going to be wandering around in. It's the area west of Solitude, Clear Pine Pond. Saw this. I mean, the last time I played Skyrim was a while ago, but like it was recent to the last time I played it, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually a nice place." So. The instinct to harvest mountain flowers, even though they're not relevant. Anyway, the entirety of the Skyrim lore. So last time, I started with the Dragonborn and started trying to explain stuff related to that. So to not overlap in topic too much, I think I'm going to go for the basic history of each province. So like we'll start with the Northwest, High Rock. Something I realized last night as I was thinking about this. So, High Rock, it's got mountains. Okay, those are high rocks, I guess. Every province except Cyrodiil is named as effectively two English words put together. High Rock, Skyrim, Morrowind, Hammerfell, Cyrodiil, Blackmarsh, Elsewhere, that's only one word even, Valenwood, and Somerset. It's just Cyrodiil, because Cyrodiil was a much later name. Anyway, and Hammerfell, I think, is the only one where its name is explained. At least, like, explicitly explained. Like, obviously, High Rock is high rocks. Skyrim is high up, like the rim of the sky. But yeah, Hammerfell's the only one that I think they've decided to explain. But High Rock, so that's where Bretons are. I know a lot of people consider it kind of the history for the High Rock kind of boring. I don't think they've done a lot with it. It's the most modeled after, like, medieval history, but thinking about it now, everything I know about it is not the medieval history part at all. I mean, the Durrani are a little bit Norman, you could say, though, I don't know. So the start of High Rock, I believe its population is just native human inhabitants of Tamriel. I think I covered in the last one that, the Pocket Guide to the Empire said all humans came from elsewhere. Not the place elsewhere, the other places. And so Bretons were Nords taken from, like, Sarthal and enslaved by elves far away from where they were taken. And were, like... Oh, it just crashed. Okay, so the game just crashed. I'm a little bit worried of that happening again. I'll at least keep going until it does a second time. So as I was saying, the Nord slave origin of Bretons has never been repeated, I think. I don't think that's ever shown up again, so that one's just definitely not it. It's just, you know, there were humans on Tamriel. I mean, even the Nord origin story agrees that humans were made at the threat of the war. I just got a loading screen that said that. Those loading screens aren't trustworthy. They're a mod, and there's a lot of mistakes on them, but I think that part was true. I'll try and just show that. So yeah, there are humans on Tamriel, and some of them... The range of humans was kind of like... It's kind of like a line. It's a bit weird. There are humans in, like, Cyrodiil and parts of Skyrim and then High Rock. And it's this strange shape that, like, historically the Empire has been shaped this way several times. Like the Cyrodiilic one, like the first and second empires both held this shape, and actually the Septim Empire was and currently in the time of Skyrim, it's this shape, missing Hammerfell. And like, it covers a lot of mountains. So like, every empire in Cyrodiil just immediately goes to Skyrim, and like, aren't those gigantic mountains? We can see them in-game, they're gigantic mountains, and in Skyrim, the thing that they actually can't cross them very easily, but they just keep doing it, and then they keep crossing the mountains, not just to Skyrim, but then also to High Rock. And like, High Rock is the furthest province from Cyrodiil. It's the only one it doesn't directly border, except Somerset, which is not that far by sea, and High Rock you can get to by sea, but it's still further by sea. So it's very it's strange writing, I think, that they keep doing that. But anyway, and so yeah, High Rock's been in the Empire for like more time than anywhere else, I think. Anyway, so the main beginning thing in the history of High Rock is the Dureni. I think it's called Dureni hegemony. The Dureni were a dynasty of High Elves. They're actually something I've heard in Daggerfall. They weren't High Elves. They were just other Bretons, and that meant Bretons invented alchemy. Because yeah, supposedly the early Dureni invented alchemy. I think that was before they came to High Rock. I don't believe there's an explanation for why. They're just, High Elves were just out exploring. Some of them found High Rock and were like, hey, these are a bunch of weak, pathetic savages we can exploit. And then so many just very extensive concubinage is maybe the polite term for it, for what ended up happening. A lot of Dureni and old Breton children, and I believe somewhere it says that because there weren't many of the High Elves, a lot of positions ended up going to these half-human children, because they're also half-elf, and so they're better than those other humans. And then, I might be making this up. I might be making up the part that's how. I forget what the relevance of that was. I think they just go on to become a lot of High Rock's early nobility. Right, that's kind of like how the feudal structure happened. They had High Elves at the top, and then half High Elves below them, and then humans as like peasants or whatever. And the Dureni hegemony ended shortly after the Battle of Glenumbra Moors, which isn't something I actually know much about. It's just one of those words that gets mentioned a lot. And so, you just remember it eventually. It sounds like a nerd thing to say, the Battle of Glenumbra Moors, but it's just a battle that it's in every fucking loading screen in Skyrim. I think there was an angry bear nearby. Anyway, and so that was, I think, the end of the First Empire's expansionism. They tried fighting the Dureni and kind of lost, but a lot of the Dureni army was destroyed, and so then any resistance against the Dureni they weren't able to fight against, and so it all succeeded, and a lot of it broke up. But the Dureni stayed around even to Daggerfall, I think. But they're always based on the Isle of Balfiera, I think. The Adamantine Tower, or the Dureni Tower. Imagine the place where reality was made. I mean, the closest equivalent in the real world religion I can think of would be like the Garden of Eden. Imagine people go to the Garden of Eden, and then one family, one dynasty lives there so long that sometimes instead of calling it Garden of Eden, you call it the Garden of Durrani. Like, that's really kind of crazy. They got the Adamantine Tower named after them. And so the Adamantine Tower is the first tower. I think I talked about the towers a bit. Bear Trap? Okay, whatever. I think I talked about the towers a bit, but to be clear, they're metaphysically important. They kind of define the laws of reality, I think. And the Adamantine Tower was the first one. It's the one the Aedra made, and they talked about what to do with Lorcan there. After they killed him. And all the towers after that were... Well, most of them were imitations made by elves. I guess, like, the Red Mountain, that's just Lorcan's heart. That just happened. And supposedly there was a tower in Skyrim, and we don't know how that one happened. We still don't know what the tower in Skyrim even is. So, it probably was also natural. Anyway. I don't think I need to say too much more about them. So, yeah, the Adamantine Tower, they were based there, and they still are there by the time of the game Daggerfall, so might still be there now, even. Who knows? So, history after the Durrani, like, there's not a lot, at least that ever seems important. Like I mentioned, at least a lot of people find it boring, and so maybe it doesn't end up reaching me on the internet. Nobody writes about it. There's, medieval history stuff. I do kind of like that they have, like, city-state-like kingdoms, like, and like Daggerfall and Wayrest are the two biggest ones, and they're rivals across the Iliac Bay. There's some kind of fun stuff to do with that, but not much in specific events. I mean, there's probably some stuff in ESO. They like destroying Orsinium. They like killing the orcs. I'm a big fan of killing orcs, the Bretons. And also, okay, this is my completely baseless theory. The Bretons are a Durrani bioweapon created by Durrani alchemists. Durrani invented alchemy, right? They're specialists in alchemy. They're exiled from Somerset Isle. I don't even remember if that's has a lore basis or not, but whatever. They leave. They have some problem with the Somerset Isle. They go somewhere else, and they find these useless savages there. But they're not elves, and all the high elves are weak to magic. But these humans aren't, and so they think, okay, we can use these to fight the other high elves. Let's make them better. Let's use alchemical processes to breed the ideal warrior against other high elves. They're able to give them some of the magical power of a high elf without the weakness to it. High elves are weak to magic, in case that didn't make it into Skyrim, but it was in the previous games. And so they get the magical power of a high elf. In Morrowind and Oblivion, at least, high elves get double the magicka pool, which is huge because there's a hard limit on how much magicka you can have. And so when you double it, it's a big deal. And Bretons get an extra 50%. It's not double, but it is a lot more. Bretons are way better at magic than anybody that isn't a high elf. And then, not just were they able to make them not weak to magic, they actually managed to put in a resistance to magic. So these things, these creations by the Durrani alchemists, They go up against a high elf army. They're full of mages, resisted. Just like, imagine every weapon you use is just 25% less effective. It's an insane advantage. And then they're using their own magic, not quite as much as the high elves could, but still a lot of magic. And the high elves, they're just dying instantly. High elf warfare is basically a race to see who can kill the other in less than 1 second faster. And Bretons show up, and suddenly they're resisting magic. They're going to last like 3 seconds at least. And then they're going to kill the high elves just as quickly. But before the Durrani could make their return to Somerset Isles and take it over with their Breton army... the other thing, they also put in a genetic obedience. They're completely obedient to their Durrani masters, because obviously these are really dangerous to themselves too. So I have to get that in. But before they can go back to Somerset with their Breton army, they end up fighting a human army, the Empire of Cyrodiil, which their Bretons are not really specialized to fight against. I mean, they weren't horrible, they ended up winning, but a lot of their loyal soldiers were destroyed, were killed. And then some of those half-elf nobles that they put in place in all the other places thought, hey, I could take control of something for myself. And they started breaking away. And because they were half-elf, they didn't have that same genetic submissiveness that the Bretons had. So they were able to break away and use their own Bretons to fight against the Durrani. And the whole thing collapsed. So there's just a rogue, loose elf-killing machines occupying an entire province of Tamriel. Yeah, so that's my idea. I remember, I'm trying to remember, I think there's arguments online sometimes about how elven the Bretons are. I think in extreme places in the Elder Scrolls they're sometimes called Manmer, which would be like implies fully half elf, but of course there's only only some Durrani nobility. How is that going to replace half the population? It wouldn't. And like in real life, Britannia and Bretons are actually real people. They're the real Bretons. I mean, there's also real Nords. They just didn't change the name on several of these. It's a part of France. Anyway, Britannia, though, if I remember, like, genetically, it's crazy how Celtic English people are. Like, you'd think between all the Germanic tribes and then maybe the French Normans, you'd end up with like some non-Celtic genetics, but it is still like majority Celtic. Like they look like they're Irish or whatever in genetics, I think. And it's like, how did the whole, like the entire language was completely replaced? It's really weird to me. Anyway, that's like fake stuff that doesn't matter because it's not relevant to Skyrim. So back to Skyrim. I guess the next place I'd look at is Hammerfell. Some stuff to have for Hammerfell. So currently it's Red Guards. Before the Red Guards, I mean, I guess the start of Hammerfell is the hammer falling, because they decided to explain the name. So some Dwemer chief was like, I'm getting out of this place, I want to go somewhere new. And he took a big hammer and he threw it. I made a throwing motion with my arms and I hit the desk. So yeah, he threw a big hammer and it landed in Hammerfell. I think it was Volendrung, actually, which ended up being Malakath's artifact, which is kind of weird. just one more piece of evidence for my favorite Dwemer actually turned into orcs theory. Big fan of that one. I say it's not mine, but it's one that I like. So it's, if you have a theory that you like, then it's like your theory. Anyway, so there's some Dwemer, strongholds, or whatever they call them, over there. They're just kind of along the north of Tamriel, I guess. It's getting late, I'm gonna skip time. So ESO has established that there were some human populations in Hammerfell before the Red Guards showed up. I don't think there's a ton of information about them. There's stuff, like, they loved astrology. And I think that's the majority of what's written about them. They really liked astrology. And so then, I don't know the exact date. I think it's late in the First Era. They're not, like, too late. Certainly, I don't know, I'm just going to throw, like, 800 of the First Era. The Red Guards show up, and they come from Yokuda. And Yokuda's a continent to the west. From what we know, there were humans, as we see, like Red Guards, and some elves there that called the Left-Handed Elves, and they really hated each other. And the Yakudans eventually wiped out the Left-Handed Elves entirely. So everybody was leaving Yokuda because it was sinking. I think the sinking was caused by war with the Left-Handed Elves. So I believe it's said to relate to some amazing swordsmen who actually they had a thing called sword singing, which was part of how this swordsman was so amazing. And it's, you sing to your swords, you get magic abilities. It's the same kind of sound-based reality manipulation that the Thuum uses, and tonal architecture that the Dwemer had. So you've got a few instances of this sound-based reality manipulation. There's a term for it, but I don't remember in the Elder Scrolls. And so some sword singer was so amazing. I don't remember the line itself, but I think the implication that most people take was that he cut an atom and caused a giant nuclear explosion that destroyed the continent, which isn't really how nuclear explosions work. You don't just cut a single atom. And you need a pretty high, like, on the periodic table atom to cut to get much energy out of it, but I don't know. So if you did something like that, you cut the fabric of the world or so whatever, and it sank a continent, it's gone now. It isn't gone. Most of it is gone. It is actually, some of it is still there. Presumably like the mountaintops or whatever. It's just like the Wind Waker. Oh my god. Legend of Zelda reference? There's even a map of it. There's even a canon map of Yokuda and what it currently looks like. So what you see in like the Elder Kings, a really good Crusader Kings 3 mod. That's canon, kind of. I mean, what they put on there isn't necessarily. But the map definitely is. We know what Yokuda looks like. People sail there sometimes. I mean, there's somebody in Oblivion that says, like, oh, I went over to Yokuda the other day. Or, not the other day, but he's like a, he makes merchant trips or something. So Yokuda sank, and they all left, and they went somewhere else, and they ended up in Hammerfell. And there were some people there before, and I guess they got a little bit genocided, who knows? I mean, it's not new to the Elder Scrolls, so sure. And those trees look really tall. I didn't know there were trees. Huh. Those look kind of nice. And they live there now? I don't know. Other moments in their history, Let me think. Well, so the main other historical aspect to them is the crowns and forebears. They get conquered by the Second Empire, and over time, a lot of people end up becoming loyal to the Second Empire, but a lot of people don't. Actually, I think in ESO they mess with it a lot. Was that it? I remember looking into some of the lore on this for Elder King's purposes and finding there's some really weird stuff in ESO. Let me just go down there. This is like a real no reason to go here part of the map. There's nothing here. Cool. But I think they tried to make it like a pre-existing division in their society. Or like and it's hard to remember which is which, I have to say, because like both of them sound like the conservative party, like forebears. Okay, that's ancestors. That would be like, oh, back like how we used to be, and then crowns like, oh, the royalty. So I actually don't remember which is which. But anyway, there's two groups, and they started as a political party in the Second Empire. It's kind of, you know, some people like the Second Empire, some people don't. It you know, kind of grew to be a much bigger thing over time, and it lasted, you know, end up reappearing in the Third Empire and lasting till the end of that, I suppose. And if you try to make a map of the crowns and the forebears, it's pretty messy. I think, so like one of them is supposed to be the like mercantile cities, and then there's like the interior, and then there's other places. It's a bit there's can you walk to that? I'm gonna try walking over there. That'd be fun. No, I want to be over here. Where are you?
Take this and hold on to it. I'll be back for it later.
Okay.
No time to talk. Snitch or double cross me and I'll kill you.
And so I guess then, you know, before Skyrim, they've been in the Third Empire for a long time, and then the Great War happened, and the Aldmeri Dominion took it, or the Empire said, okay, Aldmeri Dominion, you can have Hammerfell, and then Hammerfell was like, no, you can't, and then they fought the Aldmeri Dominion and won, and so they hate the elves. They're probably good friends with Skyrim. If Skyrim ends up independent, they're gonna hate elves together. Professional elf haters, both of them committed some good elf genocides, so they're really gonna be able to work together against the Aldmeri Dominion. Is this the edge? Is this the edge of the map? Oh yeah, this is it. Okay. Oh, this is like the corner of the map even. Okay, here it is. Anyway, I guess that's the basics for Hammerfell. So for Skyrim, I mean, it's, you know, you've played Skyrim, you probably hear a lot about it. It feels a little pointless, but I'll go over it again. So, Nords, first, well, humans as a whole, made at the throat of the world by Kine. Everybody loves that. Big fan of Kine, part myself. Doesn't show up in Skyrim enough. Very sad. So Kine, yeah, and so part of that is referring to like the Elno-Fae. If you ever heard about them, they're because in reality, I think some of this came up. Reality was made by Lorcan. He tricked a bunch of like spirits into living in Nirn instead of living in timeless, spaceless nowhere. Actually, it did have time. Akatosh. Oh, that's weird. Ariel or Akatosh, whatever, already had time. So Lorcan is kind of a space one, which I think it's nice that they don't actually explicitly say that anywhere. That's just something that people had to figure out, I think. Because, like, I didn't know it for a long time. So yeah, Lorcan is space, Akatosh is time. Anyway, so they're just like, I don't know, empty nothingness. Just kind of not really clear what was going on. So yeah, Lorcan and got them all to make it, and then most of them ended up like, oh no, I'm stuck here. But the Aedra were like, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make the I think I talked about this already. So then a lot of them are just like, end up kind of like humanoid, and then they slowly become less immortal over time. And you had the wandering Elnofey and the old Elnofey, and the old Elnofey, the thing is, they like stayed in Tamriel and became elves, and then the wandering Elnofey wandered. And I think there's a bit where, like, oh, the wandering Elnofey went somewhere else, and then they came back and were like, well, the Elnofey that stayed here had a way better time. We're really mad about this. We're gonna attack you to try and live here too. And then the old Elnofey fought back, and that's how eternal hatred between humans and elves began. Anyway, so I forget why that was important. I guess some part of the wandering Elnofey is super important to the spread of the world, probably. And then some of them went to Atmora, probably when they were wandering Elnofey still, maybe? I don't know. And then eventually a lot of them came back and were like, hey, there's elves here. Let's kill them. I think the elves tried to kill the humans first, supposedly. Who knows? I mean, Ysgramor should have, like, if you think about it, Ysgramor probably was a dragon priest. Maybe. I think it's... Maybe there is the Nordic totemic religion, and then the dragon priests happened after Ysgramor. Maybe. I'm getting lost. I'm getting tired already. How long has it been? I was not keeping track of the time. So, okay. Yeah, I mean, they had to make Sarthal, and then the elves destroy Sarthal. Maybe it's because they found the Eye of Magnus, and then Ysgramor comes back with, like, the 500 companions, and then they kill all the elves. And then they live in Skyrim. And then... what else? Eventually they move past Skyrim and they start going other places. Oh, I forgot one important thing about High Rock. So the Reachmen. You see them in Skyrim. They're in Western Skyrim. But they're also in Eastern High Rock. You're just kind of covering that mountain area. And so the Reachmen... There is some... I think some lore tries to portray them as kind of the most, like, ancient human cultures, like ancient Nedic, uninterrupted by elves, I think. Though then there's also the stuff... the Pocket Guide to the Empire says that they were actually the most elven of the Bretons. That, like, somehow the Durrani hegemony stayed around in the eastern... stayed around in the eastern part of High Rock the longest. So they ended up the most elven, and that's why they do even more magic than the Bretons do. And that I don't think that's been contradicted. Except, theoretically, if they were more Nedic, then that wouldn't really be accurate. I guess it is contradicted because the Reachmen do a lot of Daedra worship, and the elves didn't really like that. But the Bretons have a more elven religion than the other humans, and so clearly if the elven influenced Breton religion is like that, then if they're even more... And actually, coincidentally, I'm very near the Eastern Reach that's in High Rock. Anyway. Oh, okay, don't want to go there. What was I saying? So yeah, the Reachmen would have a more elven religion and have a less elven one, right? That would be weird. So probably they're less elven than like Bretons are, and they're more Nedic. Nedic is, I think it's a term that's been used in different ways. Sometimes it's used to just refer to the humans in Tamriel that aren't the Red Guards, but then it seems like it's kind of being used as the humans that aren't Red Guards or Nords. Or like, yeah, it's kind of more original humans that were on Tamriel. Anyway, okay, so the Nords again, they expanded eventually. They had the thing called the First Nord Empire, I think, which was just like a bunch of High Rock and some of Morrowind. And when we get to Morrowind, we'll talk more about that, because the Morrowind part of the story is pretty interesting. It was written from the Morrowind perspective more than the Nord one, I think. They have, you know, some High Kings and stuff. It's, you know, something crazy. In ESO, they remade the Jagged Crown. I feel like there's a storyline in ESO about a crown of worthiness or something. And I feel like maybe a writer wrote this story thinking they could use the Jagged Crown, and then realized, oh wait, because of that it's actually underground at this point in time, right? It hasn't been found yet. So make up like a different crown for them to fight over. It just seems kind of ridiculous. What else do? They have an empire. They help the Alessian rebellion. Oh, look at that. What's that thing? They end up in, you know, most of the empires. They raid people sometimes. They hate the Dark Elves. I think that's the basic origin of stuff. I wonder if this is modded. I don't know. I'm gonna take a look anyway. No idea if this is modded or not. I can't really tell. So, okay, Morrowind. Morrowind I have a lot about. Okay, so Morrowind, okay, so Morrowind begins with the Prophet Veloth. Prophet Velen is a Hearthstone card, but it's Veloth. Was an elf in the Somerset Isles that wanted to worship Daedra, and I tried to find more details about what Prophet Veloth said and what was going on with the early Velothi, and there isn't any. It's extremely minimal writing. I'm like, it's like Prophet Veloth led elves out of the Somerset Isles. Okay. But we can, we know that they worshipped Daedra, so they probably were not liked by the elves in the Somerset Isles, and so they left. So they all sailed as far away as possible to the opposite side of the continent. I think actually Morrowind has another name that isn't just two English words together. It's Resdane. I don't remember what Resdane is, but it's an alternate name for Morrowind. So they went to Resdane, and they founded a new society that would worship Daedra. Though of course not all Daedra, it's a specific philosophy. So back then they would have been similar to the Altmer. They're called the Chimer, Khmer. None of them sound good to me personally, so I don't know. The Chimer. And Veloth was like, okay, we're gonna have the 3 good Daedra. Azura, Boethia, and Mephala. And Azura is just like... prophecies is kind of the most actionable part of her. I think I've used that word several times, but it just came to my mind recently. Actionable. It's the most actionable part of her thing. Like, what does Twilight have to do with anything? It doesn't. So that's one of them, and then there's Boethia and Mephala, and this I don't think was intentional by the writers, but if you know Warhammer Fantasy, one of them is cunningly brutal, and the other one is brutally cunning. They are so similar, but one of them's a bit killier and one of them's a bit sneakier. Or a bit one of them's a bit fightier and one of them's a bit sneakier. They are like the same. They both love murder and killing and betrayal. And you know, the Dunmer have 2 gods of murder, killing, and betrayal. So you know, that's as guiding principles of their society. So you know, imagine what they're like. But, you know, in Skyrim it's easy to remember which one is which, because Boethia, I'm pretty sure, is the fightier one, so Boethia gives you the really big sword, and Mephala is the sneakier one, so she gives you the armor with a muffle effect on it. Actually, it's reversed! Actually, Boethia is the one that gives you the armor with muffle effect, and Mephala is the one that gives you a big sword. The Ebony Blade. And the Ebony Mail. They're even named the Ebony Thing. Both of them require you to kill people, to betray people that trust you. It's insane how similar they are. I'm just mad about this. I thought about this, like, they're the same. And they swapped which thing. It's crazy. It's just crazy. It's so crazy. Anyway, so okay, so that's their 3 good Daedra, and then their 4 bad Daedra, or the House of Troubles, are Sheogorath, Mehrunes Dagon, Molag Bal, and Malakath. And I think they're a really good addition, because, like, they make it a lot more interesting by having, here's the Daedra we like, and the Daedra we don't like. But they're not, like, because the bad Daedra aren't just, like, bad, they're trials that you must overcome. That's a lot about what the whole philosophy of, like, Veloth was, that you need to face struggle to become stronger. And it fits like, oh, the environment of Morrowind is so harsh compared to all the other places, but all the... I don't think it's ever used in-game, but, like, ash is a great, like, fertilizer. So the volcanic ash, you know, there's so many issues, you know, it hurts, it is bad for your health, but if you survive, it creates fertile fields that grow better crops than otherwise you'd have. But I don't think they actually mention that at any point. That's my personal new metaphor for the Velothi religion. If you ever want to take that, feel free. So early on, that's what they were like. And then eventually the Nordic Empire comes in and invades and takes over some of the land. and it's a big threat, and so of course they have to unify together to fight it. They weren't exactly unified before then, and so Indril Nerevar, which I really like the name Indril Nerevar, unites the 7 houses of Morrowind. In any of the games, there's only 5, but there's the 6th house on the 6th house on Morrowind, and also the Dwemer house back then, or at least kind of less of a house than the others, but I think they were technically considered one under Indril Nerevar's leadership. And Nerevar, if you don't know, the Nerevarine is who you play as in Morrowind. You're a reincarnation of Nerevar, so you have to take care of some of the unfinished business from like 3,000 years ago. This is still very early history. Indril Nerevar becomes Hortator of the 7 houses and leads them all in war against the Nordic Empire, and they win, and everybody loves Indril Nerevar. He's so great. And what is this place? This might be a mod or something. I don't know what that is. Okay, it's not a mod at all. It's been there since at least 2014. Cool. So. Okay, Nerevar. Okay, so, but then, over time, the Dwemer start to do their Dwemer stuff, and mess with the Heart of Lorkhan, and Nerevar's like, don't fucking do that. That's like the heart of a god, you idiot. I'm trying to remember, I think like Azura tells him, because Azura doesn't want them messing with it. And then he has like, oh, Digoth, go check. And then Digoth goes and checks, and he's like, yeah, they are. And so they were like, hey, you need to stop doing that. And they're like, no. And so then they have to go to war again. And then you get the Battle of Red Mountain, which is, I think, a really interesting event. It's kind of fun, I think, in a lot of stories, to do like different perspectives on the same event that are like Bannerlord. Mountain Blade Bannerlord does this with the Battle of Pendrake. The Battle of Pendrake is really cool. I really like learning about it through the game. And they kind of have this for the Battle of Red Mountain. There's a bunch of different perspectives, and it's not certain what happened. So somebody told the Nords that the dwarves were messing with the Heart of Lorkhan, and that's also known as Shore. You probably hear people talk about Shore. Kind of important to the Nords. They would like his heart. If they didn't know it was an option to get it, they can go get. That's cool. And I don't remember who told them. Amazing. That's a mod, by the way. So, I think it's sometimes it said Dagoth told them as part of his like ultimate betrayal plot line, but sometimes he didn't, and it was something else. And the king of the North at the time was Wolfhearth, who ends up being important later. And so they go to war to try and get the Heart of Lorkhan. The Dunmer want the Chimer want the dwarves to stop messing with the heart, and the dwarves want to mess with the heart. But I think the Nords end up fighting the Chimer. Just because, that's what, right, they were lied to at least a little bit, because they were told the Chimer were messing with the heart, but it was actually the dwarves that were messing with it. So they went and fought the Chimer, and then the Chimer had to fight the dwarves too. And there's like a few separate sides. I think there's like a main battle have been used as a distraction for like Nerevar and his friends to go into the mountain and find the heart themselves. And then you get a bunch of differing details. What? Am I becoming a vampire? What? When did I contract vampirism? Okay. You get a bunch of different details depending on who you're listening to. And Dagothar has his version of the story. And Dagothar is like evil at the time when you talk to him, but he was always really loyal. And so a lot of people kind of believe at least some parts of how he must have been trying to be loyal to Nerevar. Dagothar is the villain of Morrowind, by the way, if you haven't played it. But then you have Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil's view of what happened. And so Vivek, Almalexia, and Sothasil are three of Nerevar's like closest friends and companions and stuff, and Dagothar is another one. And they say that, like, I think they say that Dagothar killed Nerevar and had gone crazy with the Heart of Lorcan and the power within it. And so then they had to kill Dagothar. And then they took the power of the heart for themselves and became Morrowind's new gods. So, they became the new gods of Morrowind, but they kind of took the role of the previous set of gods. So, they're kind of like the Elder Scrolls, warrior, mage, thief thing. And so, Vivek could kind of seem like a warrior, but he's actually the thief, because he's the poet. And then Almalexia is the warrior. I guess she likes hitting stuff. I don't know. Then Sothasil is the mage, because he's like a nerd that goes underground and plays with robots and studies. He has a whole clockwork city. Anyway. And so they end up replacing the other ones. And so, Boethia is, the killy one, and so I guess that's Almalexia. I don't actually know how it all adds. I could go visit the temple right now. I'm gonna go visit the temple on Solstein. Okay, well, that wasn't that helpful. Okay, so I guess during Morrowind they're called the Anticipations, and now they just don't like them anymore. I thought they were kind of still revered somewhat, but I guess I just got that wrong. So they're the Anticipations in Morrowind because they kind of took the place of some of those gods. In some specific way that I don't know which is which. One of them's supposed to be sneaky and the others are killy and smart. I don't know. For the most part, it seems like a stretch to call Almalexia the warrior. Does she do much warrioring? I'm pretty sure she is not known to do any warrioring. Anyway, so they're the gods of Morrowind for 2,000 years. The living gods, they're actually present and they fight off any invasions like this from the Second Empire. But by the time of the Third Empire, Dagoth had returned. He had revived somehow from the heart, and he was taking the heart's power, and so he was stopping the tribunal from taking the heart's power. And then that's how the events of Morrowind end up playing out. The Dagoth is taking the heart's power, and the tribunal want it, but you also kill the tribunal because they killed you, probably. I mentioned before that the tribunal's version of the story is that Dagoth killed Nerevar, and then they killed Dagoth, but it's very likely that Dagoth definitely went kind of mad, but he was maybe loyal to Nerevar still. probably didn't kill him. It was probably the tribunal that did it. I mean, there's a art by Michael Kirkbride of it. It's like one of the... Okay, some vigilance stand out were just really early on calling me a vampire. I mean, I'm not even a vampire yet. Okay, so... after that all happens, mountain explodes, and Morrowind is destroyed, and a lot of them go to Skyrim, and it's been 200 years, and they're still acting like they just got there yesterday. Anyway, all that history about the Nords fighting them is why they're so mad. They didn't stop with just the first empire being repelled. Nords kept invading them. Dunmer probably attacked the Nords sometimes. They're biggest rivalry between two provinces in the Elder Scrolls, though Valenwood and elsewhere might have something too. Okay, so continuing down the provinces, Cyrodiil, I think I already covered enough of that in the previous one. I don't need to go through more here. Somerset history is kind of just the elves have been there and they stayed there the whole time. I guess one thing is sometimes elves say they're from Aldmeris, but Aldmeris isn't even real, and it's probably just Tamriel, maybe even the Somerset Isles. Maybe they're just there the whole time, who knows. And they just sit there and they'd be elves. Yeah, they're just kind of elves over there. So then Valenwood and elsewhere, they fight each other a lot. I think they have the least geographic hard border of anybody, which is interesting. I think that's kind of a good, obviously that's part of why they fight so much. Skyrim and High Rock and Hammerfell have these big mountains I was just trying to walk through earlier, so there's you can't really fight too much over that, but Valenwood elsewhere it's just flat, I think. I mean, there's jungle and desert sometimes, but anyway. So Valenwood, there's some weird stuff that I think is been added by ESO that's trying to explain the origin of both of them. And you'd think the origin of the Wood Elves is just some High Elves went to Valenwood and became short. Like a lot of the other types of elves, their origin is that. I think specifically the Dunmer and I forgot when the tribunal killed Nerevar, Azura was really mad, and so she turned all the Chimer into Dunmer, made their skin purple and grey. That's kind of an important event. So that isn't said to be what happened to the Wood Elves. They're just kind of there. And I think ESO has said that Y'ffre, their forest god that they're equivalent to in the Nine Divines, made them out of forest spirits, and the Khajiit were also made out of forest spirits, but in a different way, I think. And so then it's they're so similar, but they're fighting all the time. But it just seems kind of, that's not what any of the other origins are. So I don't know what's I don't know what's up with that. Maybe that's just a religious thing, but why would they say they're the same as Khajiits in their religion and they hate them? So it's weird. They could just be elves from old Elnofey, and some of them ended up different, like the snow elves. I mean, they don't need to be placed there specifically, they can just go there and end up like that. Who knows? No, adapt to their environment, like the snow elves. What else? So, one interesting thing is they have the eras are the beginning of the first era is is said to have been defined by a Nord king that was like, what's the earliest historical event? we'll start with that as the first era. And he was like, first Cameron Dynasty King? Is that what they call it? Am I stuck here? Oh, cool, I'm stuck here. Fun. It's always fun to get stuck in a rock. Let me just no-clip. You can do that on a computer. Fun. So, yeah, the first Cameron Dynasty King or Emperor, I don't know what they call him. And so the Cameron Dynasty of the Wood Elves is very significant. They just kind of, show up from time to time because they've been there for like 4,000 years. And for a long time that was kind of like the Wood Elves' big history thing. The only significant event in Wood Elf history. Because it's just one of the lesser developed areas. What else is there about them? I mean, well, so the Cameron Dynasty is kind of weird, because that might sound familiar for several reasons, even if you hadn't heard of the Cameron Dynasty before, because Mankar Cameron, main villain of Oblivion. You might notice he appears to be a high elf. But these were the famous Wood Elf dynasty. And I mean, I suppose you could just be... Oh god, I remember looking into it, and there is actually stuff about... Was it him? No, it's the Cameron Usurper, I think. Oh, there's a weird book about... Because the Cameron family gets up to some other stuff too sometimes. There's a story about the Cameron Usurper, which was... I think during the Third Empire, during, only like 100 years or so before the games take place. Some member of the Cameron dynasty had a son with Molag Bal, and then that son became evil. I mean, obviously. And had like a gigantic Daedric army. I think Daedra and Undead army. And just kind of attacked, messed stuff up for a while. Went to Hammerfell for some reason. Instead of trying to like attack the main center of the empire in Cyrodiil, just like, oh, I'll attack Valenwood and like Hammerfell and High Rock. Sure. I don't know why. And then later on there's another Cameron weirdo messing with Daedric princes. And I remember there's some... Mankar Cameron has some more of the old esoteric lore. He wrote the commentaries on the Mysterium Xarxes, and you can read some of them, and as I mentioned before, those were Michael Kirkbride's main contribution to Oblivion. He wasn't like lead writer anymore, but they called him and asked him, hey, we got some weird religious documents that we want to be really weird, can you help write them? And so he came in and did it. Anyway, and for some reason, I think when I looked into it, this theory wasn't that convincing, but it was a theory that he used Mehrunes' razor to make himself dragonborn, because he can wear the Amulet of Kings. And so I think, that obviously you have to do something, and I think there was something in the book that implies he used Mehrunes' razor to do it. And so if you can do that, then maybe he turned himself into a high elf, so he could be better at magic and be taller, so that he didn't look like a child. Because in Oblivion, when they want, to me, the Adorian fan always appears like he's supposed to be 10. and they just make him a wood elf, so he looks young like that. I don't know if that's what other people see, but to me, it looks like he's supposed to be a kid, and he's a wood elf. So the wood elves in Oblivion would not have been very threatening, and that might be why they just changed him to a high elf instead. And then I think there's no in-game, in-lore justification. It's entirely just fan theorizing to try to explain it. And yeah, it was like, the thing is, there's not much history to Valenwood, because they're just kind of there the whole time. You know, I mean, there's events that have happened after they were there, but none of them are as important as other events, I think. So then elsewhere, it's also, again, it's like, how the Khajiit are there is just, it's changed several times, I think. I'm pretty sure in Oblivion, they were pushing for, like, animal people are natives to like huge parts of Tamriel, and humans and elves have replaced them. Because there's a line in the Pocket Guide to the Empire that when the elves first went to Cyrodiil, they had to fight off like these big jungle cat people or something, and it's like, oh, okay, so the Khajiit were like there too in the past, and then they find like the bird people of Cyrodiil too, and like, oh, those never come up again. They found bird people and then they never mention them again. And I know there's a theory, and I don't know if this is what the writers were ever intending for. Sorry, I was just staring at a rock for a moment and focusing here. So, Umaril the Unfeathered was an alien, like, not king. He had some weird position, it doesn't matter. Why is he unfeathered? He's an elf. What does being unfeathered mean? I don't think it's explained anywhere in the game, and so people come up with weird ideas, and there's been some weird ideas about, like, oh, maybe it means this thing and this, and maybe, this is the weird one, but maybe aliens liked to wear a lot of feathers, but he didn't, and so he got named the Unfeathered. And maybe the aliens were there before the High Elves, and they wore a lot of feathers, and they're like, oh, there's bird people here. And I really like that idea personally, because it also means the aliens weren't actually High Elves. There's more distinction between versions of elves, and you get an interesting historical misunderstanding. But that might not be the only way to look at it. Maybe because we're just all over Tamriel and everybody hates them and got rid of them. I don't know. Or maybe Azura turned elves into Khajiit. I think that's a theory somewhere, and you'd think it would be... for some reason I haven't been able to find the actual text basis of that one. I don't know where that one comes from, but I think there is a text basis for that somewhere. I just didn't ever see it. So... what else? I mean... I could talk about what the Khajiit do. They have, the whole fur stock thing. You ever heard of that? The Khajiit you see in the game is only one variety of Khajiit. There's like 24. Based off of the moons. And there's 2 moons, so there's a lot of variety in how the moons are going to end up. It's not as simple as one set of phases of the moon. And there's a secret 3rd moon sometimes that... I remember hearing an idea about how it got there, and it was interesting, but I don't remember the theory anymore. Maybe there's a mysterious 3rd moon, and sometimes it appears, and when that one appears, the Khajiit that gets born under that one gets to be the main, and he has a massive mane, and he leads the Khajiit, and... well, some of the Khajiit, because some of them have a different religion that doesn't venerate the mane. I forget, I think it's the northern region. There are 2 regions of elsewhere, and I think under the Aldmeri Dominion it's split into those 2 regions. It's not like just elsewhere. It's Anaquina and Palatine. I can't remember which is which. One of them is northern and has a lot of desert. The other is southern and has a lot of jungle. And it's a bit weird that there's just a hard cutoff between jungle and desert. Like, you'd expect maybe a mountain range to cause a rain shadow effect at least. I don't know if there is one. I haven't seen it on any maps of elsewhere. But yeah, the coast, jungle, but then the back, the north towards Cyrodiil, desert. Yeah, I mean that's the basic of Anaquina and Palatine. I mean, I guess the desert part probably. I don't know. I don't know much more about it. The main lives in the south for sure, and so that's probably where people that care about him are. Actually, I think by the current day, everybody worships the main, but earlier on, it wasn't as absolute. I believe that's what's going on. So, like in ESO, it's not as absolute, but currently it is. What else? There's this weird storyline about like Rimmen, the Rim men of Rim, Rimmen. I think like literally, it's like a coincidence supposedly that there's Rim men, and the place was called Rimmen, and so the Rim men live in Rimmen. Yeah, it's just some nonsense in the naming, and it's just a city in the northeast of Elsewhere that sometimes had a large human population, and I'm pretty sure the writers of ESO messed up and like forgot that they already had an explanation for it, and so then they made a second one, and so now there's two Rim men. There's the Rim men, and then there's the Rim men, and they both live in Rimmen. And one of them are from Akavir, and one of them are from Cyrodiil, I think. And that was I think that was the expansion where they added the dragons, right? Because they wanted to figure out how to put dragons in ESO so they can make more money and to get people interested. We'll say that way. They wanted to put dragons in so they could get people interested, and they're like, well, we could put them in Elsewhere, I guess. And so then they put a bunch of dragons in Elsewhere, and I don't know. Okay, so then Black Marsh does have some history. So that's where the Argonians are. And so the weird thing is, a lot of the history that has been added lately is about how many non-Argonians used to be there. There was, I think this was old stuff. I think this was from Oblivion, maybe added the... what was it called? The Red Death? The Red something. It's a Black Plague equivalent, but it's red instead. And it came from Black Marsh, and it, swarmed the continent, and a lot of people died from it. But most significantly, basically all of the non-Argonians in Black Marsh died. And so a lot of people are like, maybe the Argonians did it because they wanted to kill people that weren't them. Or maybe they were just lucky because the Argonians have always had resistance to disease, and it just happened to come from Black Marsh because there's a lot of disease there, and because there's a lot of disease there, the Argonians are resistant to diseases. And so, maybe it wasn't an evil genocidal plot. Or maybe it was! That's fun. And so there used to be humans there. They worshipped Sanguine, I think. and there used to be Fox people there. There's some art from ESO where I think it's concept art because they don't show up because they're all dead. And it's an interesting concept art. I think, bold choices to make buff Japanese furries. I think that's what it is. So you can swim here. I hadn't tried that before. That's nice. The Japanese stuff in the Elder Scrolls is kind of strange. I think I've heard they intentionally. What is it? I think this is a mob location. I believe they intentionally took. They wanted to put Japanese things in, but they didn't want the place to be Fantasy Japan, and so they spread it around. So, like Gaiden Shinji. That's an extremely Japanese name. Gaiden Shinji. But he's Redguard. He's one of their greatest military leaders. And sword singing, I think like the Redguards have a little bit of like the Japanese katana masters, whatever going on. The blade's so thin it's sliced in atom. Well, that kind of nonsense. And then in Morrowind, orcish armor was extremely samurai armor looking. And then they have Akavir. And apparently in ESO they gave the buff foxmen Japanese looking clothing. And that's earlier, or that's later. Well, the other stuff was earlier. So I don't know. That's an interesting thing they've chosen to do. The weird. I kind of like it because I don't like it when fantasy places are just direct. Oh, this is fantasy Scandinavia, and this is fantasy Rome, and this is fantasy France. Fantasy France, just let France retire from fantasy already. Come on. Fantasy Japan. So Gaiden Shinji, he's a funny guy. I'm starting to get tired. And I think I covered a bit, so at least some history. It's extremely imbalanced. IROC got like half of it, and I said there wasn't that much to IROC's history, but I don't know. I was going for basic stuff, and I don't know. My voice is tired now. I think I've gone at least an hour. I think it'll definitely be cut down a bit, but I feel like I had loading streams and stuff. But anyways, congratulations to the person who not congratulations. Thanks to the person who asked for this. I like getting suggestions for videos I should do because for a long time I was like, I'm going to keep making really different videos, and then eventually people will tell me to keep making one type of them. And I've gotten a few comments asking for something similar to this. One of them was on the Nightgate Inn video, and they said my voice was relaxing, which is like, oh, that's good. That's like the goal of anybody that makes random videos where you ramble about something for an entire hour. It's just to be told you have a relaxing voice for it. So hopefully this also counts for that. Yeah, thanks to people that comment on videos. That's cool. I would really like to get to 1,000 subscribers. Because then my videos can be monetized. And I don't know how much money it would be, but it would be something. And I have the watch time. I've had the watch time since 2 years ago. And so it's just... I need the subscriber number to say 1,000. I don't even need active subscribers. That's not I don't know. I'm just talking about the channel because I was talking about the people commenting, and that's like the main thing I think about for like building audience. Because I can make videos that get like 10,000 views, and I don't know. Goodbye.